The coffee still carried that comforting heat as Dean Harris lifted the mug to his lips. Gentle spirals of steam rose lazily upward, twisting and fading into the quiet morning air. Through the wide kitchen window, he observed Kirstston carefully, loading the final pieces of her expensive designer luggage into the trunk of her sleek Mercedes. She had spent weeks preparing for this girl's trip to Napa Valley, organizing everything with the precision of a carefully planned military campaign. Over time, Dean had learned it was wiser not to question her elaborate preparations. In the 6 long years since their son Jordan's terrible accident, any challenge to Kirstston's methods usually ended in heated arguments that left him spending the night alone on the living room couch. 2 weeks is quite a long time, Dean had mentioned the previous evening, deliberately keeping his voice calm and neutral. Kirstston had responded with that familiar practiced smile, the kind that never truly touched her eyes. "The girls and I really need this getaway. Dean, you have no idea how completely exhausting it's been, dealing with everything here at home. Everything here." That was how she referred to their son now. Not Jordan. Not our boy. Just everything. Dean took another slow sip of his coffee and glanced upward toward the ceiling. Jordan was presumably still asleep upstairs in his room. At least, that was what Dean assumed. The specialized hospital bed Kirstston had demanded they install had come at an enormous cost. So had the motorized wheelchair, the extensive bathroom renovations, and all the physical therapy equipment that now sat gathering dust in the far corner of Jordan's bedroom. Kirstston had dismissed the last 3 therapists one after another, claiming they weren't showing sufficient progress with their son. Outside, the Mercedes engine roared to life with a deep, powerful growl. Kirstston didn't bother coming back inside to say goodbye. She didn't even offer a simple wave. The luxury car reversed aggressively down the driveway, tires squealing just slightly against the pavement. Dean stood motionless at the window, coffee mug still in hand, watching, until the vehicle disappeared around the corner of their quiet suburban Seattle cul-de-sac. A strange, heavy silence gradually settled over the entire house, wrapping around him like an unexpected weight. 14 full days. Just him and Jordan. No Kirstston constantly hovering with her ever-present clipboard, strict schedules, and carefully measured pills. Those pills. Jordan took so many medications throughout the day. Dean had tried to understand what each one was for, but Kirstston had always maintained complete control over every medical decision. She was the one who spoke directly to the doctors, who picked up the prescriptions, and who personally measured out every dose 3 times daily with clinical precision. Then came the sound. Footsteps. Steady. Normal, confident footsteps descending the staircase behind him. Dean's coffee mug slipped from his suddenly numb fingers and shattered loudly across the kitchen floor, ceramic pieces scattering everywhere. He spun around, heart pounding violently against his ribs, and witnessed something utterly impossible. Jordan stood there at the bottom of the stairs, fully upright, walking toward him with purposeful, strong strides. No shuffling, no stumbling. He was moving exactly like a healthy boy who had never been injured at all. "Dad." Jordan's voice came out urgent and breathless. At 12 years old, their son had inherited his mother's dark hair, but those sharp gray eyes belonged to Dean. Right now, those eyes burned with a mixture of intelligence, fear, and determination that Dean had never witnessed before. "We need to leave the house immediately. Right now. We can't stay here another minute." Dean found himself frozen, in place, unable to move or fully process what he was seeing. 6 years. Jordan had been confined to that wheelchair for 6 long, painful years. The accident at the lake house when he was only 6 years old, the fall from the dock that doctors claimed had permanently damaged his spinal cord beyond any hope of repair. The endless nights Dean had spent watching his son struggle. The crushing financial burden of medical bills. The gradual, painful death of their marriage under all that relentless pressure. "Jordan." "What? How are you?" Dean stammered. "There's no time to explain everything right now." Jordan interrupted, grabbing his father's arm with surprising strength. "I'll tell you everything, but we have to go immediately." She said something was coming. "They're on their way." "Who's coming?" "What are you even talking about?" Dean asked, confusion flooding through him. Yet even as the words left his mouth, a cold, dreadful feeling settled deep in his stomach. The way Kirstston had left earlier, no proper goodbye, that aggressive speed as she drove away, the strange finality of it all. Something felt terribly wrong. Jordan was already moving quickly toward the garage, pulling Dean firmly along with him. I've been faking it, Dad. For the last 4 years, I've been pretending. I'm so sorry, but I had no choice. If she ever found out I could walk again, she would have. His voice cracked with emotion. Please, just trust me. Grab the car keys. We need to get out before they arrive. The sound that suddenly cut him off was unmistakable, the deep rumble of a large engine. Like a heavy truck or van pulling into their driveway, Dean's mind raced through every possible innocent explanation. A delivery? No packages were scheduled. Landscapers? They only came on Thursdays. Through the frosted glass of the front door, he could clearly see the dark outline of a large vehicle, parked outside. Jordan's face strained of all color. They're early, he whispered. The garage now? Something in his son's genuine terror finally broke through Dean's paralysis. He snatched the keys from the hook by the door and they both ran. They burst through the side door into the garage, where Dean's reliable Chevy Tahoe waited. His hand shook badly as he fumbled with the key fob. See. Jordan climbed smoothly into the passenger seat with an agility that should have been completely impossible after 6 years in a wheelchair. Dean hit the garage door opener. The door began its painfully slow mechanical ascent. Too slow. Everything felt agonizingly slow. He started the engine, slammed the gear into reverse, and backed out through the partially opened door with desperate urgency. As they emerged, Dean caught sight of boots, 2 pairs of heavy men's work boots. Oh, go, go. Jordan shouted. Dean didn't hesitate. He pressed the accelerator hard. The Tahoe shot backward out of the garage, with enough force to press them both back into their seats. The 2 men jumped aside quickly. Dean glimpsed dark clothing, ski masks covering their faces, and something metallic glinting in one man's hand. Moments later, they were speeding down the street, tires screaming as Dean yanked the steering wheel sharply. Drive toward the industrial district, Jordan instructed, breathing heavily. Near the shipping yards. There's a storage unit number 247. I'll explain everything once we're safely inside. Dean's knuckles turned white as he gripped the steering wheel. He kept checking the rearview mirror. The dark van was already pulling out of their driveway, beginning to follow them. Jordan, you need to tell me what the hell's going on right now? He demanded, voice tight with fear and confusion. His son turned in the seat, and Dean saw tears streaming down the boy's face. Mom has been trying to kill us. Dad. Both of us. And I have proof. The words hung heavily in the air between them like thick, choking smoke. Dean's mind instinctively rejected them. Kirstston, his wife, the mother of his child. She was cold. Yes. Distant. Certainly. But murder? That was completely insane. That's insane, Dean said aloud, though his voice sounded hollow and unconvincing, even to himself. 4 years ago? I started getting better, Jordan explained rapidly. Eyes darting to the side, mirror to watch the van. My legs began working again. The doctors called it a miracle spontaneous recovery. But Mom became extremely upset. She increased my medications dramatically, and I started getting worse again. Dizzy, weak, completely drained. I couldn't understand why, until one day I pretended to swallow my pills and hid them instead. Dean swerved around a slower car, his thoughts spinning wildly. You're saying she was poisoning you? Yes. To keep me paralyzed? And she's been poisoning you too, Dad. Every morning in your coffee. Haven't you noticed how constantly tired you've felt? How foggy your mind has been? God help him, Dean had noticed. The exhaustion that never seemed to leave. The way his thoughts sometimes moved as if through thick molasses. He had always blamed stress, age, and the heavy burden of caregiving. I've been watching her for 4 years, Jordan continued, voice steady despite the tears. Playing Paralyzed so she wouldn't suspect I had figured it out. I've been collecting evidence, great recordings, her pills, and yours that I swapped and hid. Important documents. Dad, she's done this before. What? Dean's voice cracked. Her first husband, Paul Costello. He died in a house fire 7 years ago, right before she married you. The life insurance paid out almost $1 million. I found everything. She's planning the exact same thing for us. That's why she left on this trip. Those men back there, they were going to make it look like an electrical fire. Tonight, while we were supposed to be asleep, we were supposed to die. Dean's hands trembled so violently he nearly lost control of the vehicle. He forced himself to breathe deeply and focus on the road. The storage facility finally appeared on the right. You've had proof for 4 years and never told me. Dean asked, pain evident in his voice. I was scared, Jordan admitted, his voice breaking. I was only 8 years old when I realized what was happening. Who would believe a little kid? And she was always watching you so closely. I couldn't risk telling you when she might. Over here. I had to wait until she left. I had to plan everything carefully. Dean pulled into the storage facility, using the code Jordan recited perfectly from memory. The dark van followed at a cautious distance. Dean navigated the maze of identical orange doors until Jordan pointed out unit number 247. They parked quickly and jumped out. Jordan entered another code on the keypad with practiced fingers. The heavy door rolled upward, revealing something. That made Dean's heart nearly stop. The entire storage unit had been transformed into a sophisticated command center, multiple laptops, cameras, filing boxers, stacked neatly, and an entire wall covered with photographs, documents, and connecting strings like something straight out of an intense crime thriller. In the center hung a photograph of a man Dean didn't recognize, mid-30s, handsome, smiling confidently at the camera. Paul Costello, Jordan said quietly. Mom's first victim? Dad, I've been building the complete case against her for 4 years. Everything we need to destroy her is right here in this unit. Dean stared at his 12-year-old son, this stranger, who had spent a third of his young life pretending to be paralyzed, secretly playing a dangerous long game against his own mother. In that moment, he realized he had no real idea who Jordan truly was or what his son was truly capable of achieving. Outside, the van's engine continued idling ominously, waiting. The storage unit was climate controlled, which explained how all of Jordan's sensitive equipment had remained undamaged during the years he had been secretly visiting. Dean counted 4 laptops, 2 tablets, and enough external hard drives to stock a small electronics store. The evidence wall looked incredibly professional, like something assembled by federal investigators. How did you even manage to do all of this? Dean asked, still struggling to comprehend the scale of what he was seeing. Jordan pulled down the rolling door, sealing them safely inside. I had help, sort of, he replied. He moved to one of the laptops and opened it. After I realized what Mom was doing, I knew I had to be extremely smart about everything. I started with the basics, pretending to be deeply asleep whenever she thought the medication had knocked me out. I overheard phone calls, private conversations with Grandma Marjorie. Your grandmother knows about this. Dean felt a fresh wave of nausea. Jordan's laugh carried a bitter edge that sounded far too mature for his age. She's the one who planned most of it. This is the family business, Dad. He pulled up a digital family tree on the screen. The Cunningham family line wasn't normal. Next to many names were dates, large dollar amounts, and the cold word deceased. 3 generations, Jordan explained softly. The Cunningham women marry wealthy men or men with excellent life insurance policies. They slowly poison them, make them completely dependent, and then stage accidents. House fires mostly, but Aunt Deb's second husband drowned. Cousin Tracy's husband supposedly died in a car accident. Documented 12 cases spanning over 30 years. Dean felt physically sick. He had met Marjorie Cunningham many times over the years. The sweet grandmother who brought homemade cookies to family gatherings. The helpful woman who had assisted with Jordan's care after the accident, who had been inside their home countless times with full access to everything. How did you even rent this storage unit? Dean asked. You're only 12. I didn't. Paul Costello did. Jordan replied, pulling up another document. Before he died, he rented this unit. I found the key hidden in a box of Mom's things she thought no one would ever find. There was a letter inside. He opened a small lockbox and carefully removed a handwritten letter. Dean recognized the controlled panic in the shaky handwriting. If you're reading this, I'm probably already dead. Kirstston is not who she seems. I've been sick for months. The doctors can't figure out what's wrong with me. She insists on handling all my medication. I've started to suspect. The letter ended abruptly, unfinished. Dean could vividly imagine Paul Costello sitting alone in this very unit, desperately racing against time to document his growing suspicions before Kirstston's poison completely took over. Unfortunately, he had lost that race. I've been adding to his research ever since, Jordan said. Whenever Mom believed I was unconscious, I was actually awake, watching, listening, and secretly recording. She and Grandma Marjorie would sometimes talk right in my room, assuming I was completely out from the medication. They discussed the entire plan, the timeline, how they would collect the insurance money. Dean paced the small, confined space, desperately trying to organize his spiraling thoughts. The men waiting outside in the van, Vince, Humphrey, and Randall Piper. They worked for Grandma Marjorie. They had done this kind of thing before. They specialized in staging accidents that looked completely natural. Tonight was supposed to be Dean and Jordan's turn. Jordan's voice grew harder, more determined. But I've been ready for them. I swapped the SIM cards and rerouted the security cameras around our house 3 months ago. Everything that happens there tonight will be recorded to a secret cloud server they know nothing about. Dean stopped. Payson and Truey looked at his son. Jordan stood straighter than Dean could remember from before the accident. Shoulders back, jaw set with resolve. There was real steel in those gray eyes. Whatever the last 4 years had done to him, living a constant lie. Watching his own mother plot his murder, it had forged something unbreakable inside the boy. We need to call the police, Dean said firmly. No, Jordan responded immediately. Not yet. We don't have enough solid evidence. Everything I've collected is still somewhat circumstantial. Recordings from a child could easily be dismissed in court. The material about Paul Costello is old. A skilled lawyer would tear it apart. He gestured toward the impressive evidence wall. We need more. We need them to actually attempt the crime. Then we'll have them. Are you insane? Dean's voice rose with disbelief. You want to let them burn down our house while they think we're still inside? They already believe we're going to be inside. Jordan replied calmly. He moved to another laptop and pulled up a live feed showing multiple angles of their house living room, kitchen, hallway, and Jordan's bedroom with the empty hospital bed. I installed hidden cameras everywhere. We're going to watch them do it. Document every single moment. And then, he opened another screen displaying carefully prepared email drafts and queued video files. Then we're going to destroy them completely. A sudden knock on the storage unit door made them both jump. 'Twas an aggressive, just firm, and almost polite. Then a muffled but clear voice called out, Mr. Harris. Jordan, we know you're in there. Let's talk about this like reasonable adults. Dean recognized the voice. He had heard it once before at Paul Costello's funeral 7 years earlier, when he and Kirstston had just started dating. She had introduced him to several people from her past. This voice had been one of them. Jordan quickly pulled up a photograph on his laptop, a man in his 50s with graying hair and a friendly, trustworthy smile. Vince Humphrey, Jordan whispered. Grandma Marjorie's boyfriend. He's killed at least 5 people that I can prove. We just want to talk, Vince continued from outside. There's been a serious misunderstanding. Your mother is very worried about you, Jordan. She asked us to check on you when you didn't answer your phone. Jordan shook his head firmly and showed Dean's screenshot. Jordan unscrewed the vent cover with quick, confident movements. I've had for years to plan for every possible scenario. Dad, trust me. The door shuttered again, even harder this time. They had maybe a minute before it gave way completely. Dean grabbed the backpack his son handed him and watched as Jordan carefully selected specific laptops and hard drives with the precision of someone who had rehearsed this escape many times. His 12-year-old son, his baby, had been living in a nightmare for a third of his life, secretly acting as a spy against his own mother. Go, Jordan said, gesturing toward the open vent. I'll be right behind you. Dean hesitated for a split second. I know, Dad, Jordan said softly. I know this all sounds completely insane. We're going to make them pay for what they did to Paul, to us, to everyone. His voice was cold and mature, carrying none of the innocence of a child. Now go. Dean crawled into the narrow ventilation shaft, the cool metal pressing against his hands and knees. Behind him, he heard Jordan following closely. Then came the loud sound of the storage unit door finally giving way, followed by angry shouts and heavy footsteps. But by then, they were already deep in the darkness, moving steadily toward whatever came next. The gray Honda that Paul Costello had driven 7 years earlier had a noticeable dent in the passenger door, but it started smoothly on the first try. Dean took that as either a good omen or proof that his son had kept it in excellent condition. They slipped out through the storage facility's back exit while Vince Humphrey and his partner were still searching the original unit. Dean drove aimlessly at first, simply putting as much distance as possible between them and immediate danger. His mind refused to stop racing. Every assumption he had built his life around for the past 6 years was crumbling into ashes. Kirstston, their marriage, Jordan's paralysis, everything had been carefully constructed lies. All of it coldly calculated. "Where are we going?" he finally asked. Jordan had 3 laptops open on his lap, fingers flying rapidly across the keyboards. "Motel 6 on Highway 99. I booked a room 3 days ago under Paul Costello's name. Paid in cash. They won't think to look for us there." "You're 12 years old? How did you manage to book a room?" "I look older when I wear the right clothes and speak with confidence. People usually see exactly what they expect to see." Jordan didn't look up from his screens. "I've been sneaking out of the house dozens of times over the last 4 years. Mom thought I was completely paralyzed and heavily sedated. I would wait until she was asleep, then leave for a few hours. I used library computers and coffee shops with free Wi-Fi to build this entire case." Dean's hands tightened on the steering wheel. His son, his brilliant, terrifying, resourceful son. "Jordan, you're still a kid. You shouldn't have had to do any of this." "But I did," Jordan replied quietly. "If I hadn't, we would both be dead right now." The heavy truth of those words settled over them like thick ash. Dean wanted to argue, to insist that he would have protected them, that he would have eventually figured it out. But the painful reality was that he hadn't. He had been too exhausted, too mentally foggy, too overwhelmed by medical bills, insurance paperwork, and trying to hold together a marriage that had already died long ago. The poison in his morning coffee every single day, for 6 years. How much permanent damage had it caused? "What exactly was she giving me?" Dean asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Jordan pulled up a detailed file on one of the screens. "It started with benzodiazepines, Valium derivatives. Enough to keep you compliant, tired, and easier to control. In the last 2 years, she added small doses of lithium. It affects cognitive function when you're not bipolar. It made you foggy, uncertain, and much easier to gaslight." Dean remembered the frequent arguments, the times Kirstston had insisted he was remembering things incorrectly, that he was confused, that his version of events didn't make any sense. He had slowly begun doubting his own memories, his own mind. The Motel 6 appeared on the radar. Dingy 2-story building that likely rented rooms by the hour. It was the perfect place to disappear for a while. Dean parked in the back, and they carried their bags upstairs to the corner room on the 2nd floor. Inside, it smelled strongly of old cigarette smoke and harsh industrial cleaner. 2 double beds, a TV bolted to the dresser, and curtains that had definitely seen better days. But for now, it felt relatively safe. Jordan immediately set up his laptops on the small table, transforming the modest room into a high-tech command center once again. Dean watched him work, amazed by the efficiency and focus. Where had the innocent child gone? When exactly had Jordan stopped being a normal kid? For years, Dean thought to himself, his son had been forced to play this exhausting role for 4 long years, pretending to be paralyzed. "That was necessary," Jordan said, as if reading his father's thoughts. "But it was also horrible. I won't lie, Dad, there were many nights I wanted to tell you everything, so badly. Moments when I almost broke down completely. But I couldn't take the risk. If Mom suspected for even 1 second that I knew the truth, she would have sped up her timeline. We would both be dead already." Dean sat down heavily on one of the beds, suddenly overwhelmed by exhaustion as the adrenaline began to fade. Crushing weight of reality pressed down on him. "Your childhood," Dean said, voice thick with emotion. "I can't ever give that back to you." "I know," Jordan replied, his voice softening. "But I'm alive. We're both alive. And now we're going to make sure they pay for everything they've done. The police wouldn't be enough," Jordan explained. He had thought through every possible angle for 4 years. If they went to the authorities now, they didn't have enough ironclad proof. Recordings from a child could be dismissed. Evidence about Paul Costello was old. Grandma Marjorie had powerful connections. Her brother was a judge, her nephew a prosecutor. The Cunningham family had been getting away with this for 30 years because they knew exactly how to make problems disappear. "So what are you suggesting?" Dean asked. "We need absolute, undeniable proof. Video evidence of them actually committing the crime. confessions, complete financial records. We need to build a case so strong that their connections won't matter. Jordan pulled up the live security feed from their house. Tonight, we're going to get exactly that. The screen showed multiple clear angles of their empty home. Everything looked deceptively normal and quiet, waiting. They believe we're still inside, Jordan said, asleep from the medication, completely helpless. They're going to return tonight to finish the job, and we're going to record every single second of it. And then what? Dean wondered. While the house burned, Jordan would be hacking into Grandma Marjorie's personal server. She kept detailed digital records of all their operations, names, dates, methods, everything. Jordan had been working to break through her security for 8 months. Tonight, while they were distracted celebrating what they thought was their success, he would take everything. The hours passed with intense preparation. Jordan walked Dean through every system, every camera angle, and every possible contingency. The boy had thought of absolutely everything: backup power sources, multiple redundant servers, emergency contacts who would automatically receive all the evidence if anything went wrong. At 10 p.m., the plan moved into motion. The dark van returned. Vince Humphrey and Randall Piper entered the house using Kirstston's spare key. They moved with professional efficiency, setting up incendiary devices in the basement to make it look like faulty electrical wiring. The cameras captured everything clearly. Dean and Jordan watched in silence as their family home was prepared for destruction. At midnight, the timers activated. Flames spread rapidly through the house they had lived in for years. While the fire raged, Jordan completed the download from Marjorie's server decades of records. 17 victims total, financial trails, communications, even video trophies the women had kept. Dean made the dangerous decision to return to the burning house, too. Retrieve the physical evidence Jordan had hidden in a fireproof safe. He barely escaped with his life, suffering burns and smoke inhalation. He got the documents. By morning, they had everything. They met with FBI agent Sam Osborne and presented the mountain of evidence. Arrest warrants were issued quickly. Marjorie, Vince, Randall, and the others were taken into custody that same evening. The trial was long and grueling, but the evidence was overwhelming. Guilty verdicts on all counts. Life sentences without parole for the main perpetrators. 3 months later, Dean and Jordan began the slow process of healing. They moved to San Diego for a fresh start. Jordan gradually learned how to be a normal teenager, again making friends, playing sports, laughing freely. The scars remained, but so did their bond as father and son. 2 years after the nightmare ended, Dean stood on a sunny beach watching Jordan play volleyball with his friends, finally living the childhood that had been stolen from him. They had survived the worst kind of betrayal. They had exposed evil hiding behind a beautiful, familiar face, and together they had won. Justice had been served. The victims were finally avenged. And Dean Harris and his son Jordan were free to walk into their future stronger, wiser, and unbreakable.